The waitress is here?
Goddamn right I am.
Tony, so great to
Hey
talk
George.
to you. How are you?
Yeah, good man. Good to see you again.
Likewise. Yeah, I just want to start by saying I find this movie really interesting,
Oh, cool.
especially given your life, your work, your career, kind of up to this point. And I guess I want to start by asking you, and I do want to talk about some of how your other work has influenced you and brought you to this film. But something I read that you said once, I'm interested in America as an idea, as a reality, and the kind of tension between the two that comes up a lot. And I feel
Yeah.
like that really captures something about this movie because you've got like this kind of quilted pattern of icons and ideas and symbols, and it seems presented to some degree without comment, without
Yeah.
too much commentary. But I'd like to talk about that because this is an interesting time for us culturally in
Yeah,
America.
yeah.
And so sinking your teeth into all of that, but just kind of being like, you know, what do you think? It's very interesting,
Yeah.
very loaded film, you know?
Yeah, no, it is weirdly loaded. Even though like I kind of try to make a point I'm not trying to hit political points. I'm trying to like and it might be a cop out. I'm trying to like dramatize interesting friction points to me or just things that I see in that realm of like I'm a small town patriotic guy. You know, like I don't know how much of that is temperament. I don't know how much of that is just virtue of that background. But I'm also not an idiot. And so I see like the ways that that the country doesn't live up to these promises. And I also am not an idiot in terms of like, well, yeah, it might be nice for you, Tony, as a straight white dude, but there's some other people who, that the American experience is maybe not quite as, fulfilling as it has
Yeah.
been, for me, like for me, like I'm the small town trailer park guy who like, kind of now is working in Hollywood. That's kind of cool. But that's not obviously not everybody's story. So there's like even my political like even though I don't try to put a political like I don't like editorializing in
Mm.
art really. To me like that's a little bit of I don't know. It's just it diminishes art. I think art should be a little messier than that, and it should be a little bit unresolved, and it should resolve. If it resolves itself at all, it should be with the viewer and not in the text itself.
Mm.
And that's all kind of there in the work, and it's not all like a lot of it is just gut instinct, or a lot of it is just things, almost like a grab bag of like, okay, like there's not a lot, in my opinion, not a lot of writers, directors who seem to be, coming to small town America from like a place of like love of town America, warts and all. And so like part of that's also like I'm trying to kind of I was raised on like what I'd call like the blue, like this like white blue collar cultural canon of like, too violent of movies, trucker movies with Burt Reynolds, Clint Eastwood, pro wrestling, country music. And like that's culture to me. That's like my cultural heritage, and so I'm trying to like almost like pull in figures from that as well, but not just as pure nostalgia, but also to kind of take a look at them through present lens. So yeah, there's a lot going on from at the source. So it's not surprising that the movie itself has this disparate I don't know, like all these different charges around these kind of thematic questions.
Yeah, and there are a million things in what you said that I'd want to pick at and talk more about, but I do think, you said to me when we talked at the screening, you said about like Rio Bravo, you were like you called it an attractiveness about like stoic machismo or like macho stoicism. And you're like, and
Yeah,
I can't help it. Like, and the way
yeah,
you talk about your cultural background, you're like, I can't help it. I like it. Maybe that's just because I'm me, because of what I
yeah.
look like, but you have awareness about it
Hmm.
too. And the movie like touches on these things, and like the characters are like in these spots, but they're like they kind of move like they're gentle. You're gentle with their archetypes. Like we have
Mhm.
indigenous people, Native Americans or Indians that are like really aggressively political. And
Yeah.
you know, you talk about Johnny Cash. You wrote a book about Johnny Cash. He gets really aggressively political and editorializes in his own way. But I'm fascinated to know kind of like, you know, when when you put all this out there, there's a character in the middle of the movie who's analyzing art, kind of like
Mhm.
artifacts. Like I feel like you are kind of commenting in a way on like, is everybody just oblivious to the impact
Yeah.
of their take or their upbringing? Like, I want to hear you talk a little more about this, like this idea of like, I love it. I know it's not always great, but we have to resolve that in ourselves somewhere.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on in terms of that being in there. And I would say, yeah, like I'm writing, making the movie from a place of unresolved um conflict within myself on this.
So you don't have
Yeah.
you're saying like, I don't know, I like it, but I don't know if it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have this dual citizenship thing going on, like where, a genuinely blue collar small town trailer park background where like my parents were the janitors at my elementary school. I started working pretty much full time at 15, graduated high school, worked in a pickle factory and started taking community college and then classes. And then somehow I got on this track where I ended up, getting an MFA in poetry, getting a PhD in English from Duke, and went on this whole other weird side quest. And now kind of almost my artistic like now like the the thing that I have is like how can I reconcile these two sides of myself, of this like over aware, over intellectualized version that I pursued, and then this bedrock self that like was raised in a way by these stories that many would call problematic and probably are, but and yet when I really needed something to give me a reason to live, especially as like a teenager who didn't know my father, didn't have a proper father figure, had all these, little things going on, like this kind of, you know, what some would call white trash culture, like kind of saved my life, And so like how like that so I don't want to sell out either side of it. So I'm just kind of I have this like duality in my brain and heart about this stuff, and yeah, and so then I go into it from that, and creating from a place of unresolved tension, I don't think is the worst thing in the world.
No, it's beautiful because I feel like the reason I want to bring this out and talk about this aspect
Yeah.
so much is that like this is kind of what we need, right? We need to know, I think we in like the larger sense, that it's okay that it's unresolved, that it's okay
Yeah.
that we're holding these two different things, that it's okay to like John Wayne and know that he's not a great guy. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
hard. Like it took me a long time to get to a place where I could just alone like accept like hell, I like this guy. Like, I'm sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
it,
No,
but
I
I
mean,
know he sucks. Like,
yeah, no, it's the same. I wrote my dissertation around Ezra Pound, genius poet,
right,
complete fascist piece of shit,
right,
anti-Semitic fuckhead. Um, and yet, through this pretty terrible human being, a great flowering in the poetic American poetic tradition emerged, and like
yeah.
that, yeah, and it's yeah, it's troubling. It's weird, and like yeah, like that's the idea of like trying to I as much as I can trying to let the art live on its own terms and not just be a reflection of
Yeah,
my personal opinions, even though
yeah,
my feed it, and not just be an advertisement for me being on the right side of history. Like that's you got to kind of like almost like fight for that. I mean, like when I started writing the script and I started making this little white boy
yes,
talk like he's the like I'm just like this freaks me the fuck out. Like this makes me nervous, and yet the scenes are so much more interesting with this kid doing this than they were before. you know. And so I think I've got to go with what makes for a better story. Like it's if he was just if he wasn't doing that, I don't I mean maybe I could come up with something else, but like that's but yeah, I mean it's that kind of thing. Like am I willing to like can I pull off and then live with the consequences? Because like, if people hate it, well then they hate it. But that's part of the deal. Like if I get to tell a story I want to tell, then I have to like live with the consequences of it, whatever they may be. And so yeah, no, that's it's a there's so much hyper awareness of ourselves as artists and people and everything else. We see ourselves as like almost avatars more than humans sometimes that yeah, it feels a little riskier. Yeah.
You're an instance of, sometimes I think to be a really good artist, somebody has to have either a lack of a certain awareness or they need to be able to turn it off, because you can
Yeah.
overthink, you can really think yourself into a corner, I think. And like the way I'm talking about this movie, the way we're talking about it would make it very hard to make a good movie if you thought this way in the process. Like
100%.
it would
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
kill
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
your
no,
ability.
that's true. I mean, that's why like coming out of academia, like I tried to kill the critic part of my brain. Like I just like I stopped listening to Radiohead and indie rock. I stopped reading philosophy books and criticism books. I watched Sons of Anarchy and I listened to AC/DC and Guns N' Roses and country music and try to get to like a primal place because I knew I wanted to get into screenwriting, and then I was writing all these like masturbatory like self-aware meta treatises on crime stories and not actually telling a crime story, and yeah, so like that's a danger for me, like that self like I have to like remind myself like no one's gonna go see a movie because they feel like it's a timely theme. They're gonna like go to it because they'll feel something, they connect with these characters, they're interested in these characters, they're interested in the story, and it's a thing. I mean I have to consciously force myself to turn it off because like my brain does that critic side, my brain still goes there.
Yeah,
And
I bet.
oh yeah.
But when you're writing that boy, for example, and I don't want to give away what happens. His arc is great, and there's a point, there's a really important point where he's kind of in this, his final moments. It seems like maybe one things could go one way.
Yeah,
Everything's indicating that things could go one way, but you
yeah.
say in a very clear way, and so does your character, one of your other characters. No,
Mhm.
things don't go that way.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a choice. That
yeah,
choice, as much as you try to say, I'm not going to editorialize or say something, you
yeah.
make choices as an artist that leave us with the place where we can kind of like complete that circle. Like we could say, oh, he's saying this, because the power of the art is
Mhm.
is going to leave us, the dialogue between art and viewer is going to leave us drawing conclusions about the world, right? So you left us with a message there, and in the other roles too.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, I think I would say that like Zahn's character Ghost Eye as conceived wouldn't have done anything other than that.
Okay, so
But
in your mind, it was never an option, or did you ever
but no,
consider?
I mean like so I didn't know how that whole arc was going to end, and so like I just came up with this idea like when I'm writing on my own, I'll come up with characters and some opening scenes and like a genre or a mode I want to be in, but I don't have the whole thing worked out. And so when I'm writing it and I'm just like, okay, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? And then I couldn't, yeah, there was like almost there was like a yeah, there was a threshold I couldn't cross in my writing, in terms of like, like I wouldn't buy that. And also, yeah, that seems like no, it seems like there are there are cultural differences. There are, and there is a limit to how much you can love another culture and you can be influenced by it and you can, all that, but like there is a certain there's a limit there. And I guess that I don't know so much I'm wanting to send that message, but I guess that is like an
It's a
operating
belief. It's a core
belief
belief.
of mine that informed what to me are character choices. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It's interesting when a character takes the wheel a little bit in your writing. Can you talk
Mhm.
about, the dynamic between so Sydney Sweeney is great in this. It's a side of her I don't think we've seen. And she's a very interesting icon right now. She's loaded.
Yeah, yeah.
And at this time particularly.
Yeah,
And in this role, she plays something so soft, gentle, and vulnerable and human. And she has, I'm going to spoil a little bit, but she is a tough female mother character. I don't know the relationship, but
yeah,
and she's
yeah, from
dressed in a way that sends signals, like she's wearing this shirt and she's like, and I just want to hear you talk a little bit about that aspect of America. Because
yeah,
she wants to be a country singer. She's a small town diner waitress. She's like, but we don't know these people politics, but we kind of do, you know?
yeah, yeah.
And with Sydney, that's such an interesting thing.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, it does become a richer text because of Sydney's growing iconic and kind of status and her as, this week's, site of the culture wars is over her, iconic status and what she stands for and stuff. And so like yeah, obviously wasn't going on when I wrote the
No,
character
no, it's
a
just one
little
of those
bit,
things.
but there is but so like yeah, that whole element. So Sydney's character, yeah, she obviously does. Myself and Sydney Sweeney, you would not mistake each other for each other. But the character Penny Joe is in a way like in the same way that Cal is a loosely based on the childhood version of me. Like
Yeah.
Sydney Sweeney's kind of like the young artist version of me. Like I'm in a small town. I'm doing kind of entry level service and labor jobs. When I was a kid, I had a stammer, and but I had as a teenager, suddenly I thought like I think I'm an artist. How does somebody from my background go out and become an artist in the world? And like I kind of have to leave. I didn't kill a bunch of people, but I have to.
Metaphorically, you did.
Yeah, but I had to basically just leave my family and life behind and just risk it, right? And so it's a little bit unfair. So my stepfather, when I was a kid, would make fun of my stammer, my stutter a lot. And so yeah, like there's a reason why in a lot of my scripts I end up killing father figures. Uh, I did not have a warm relationship with my stepfather. But and then an original version of the script, there was both Penny Joe had both a father and a mom, and then in the revision process, it's like, well, just they appear just shortly. There's another scene with her mom that didn't make the final cut, even though they were fine in it. But that one scene that's in there did plenty enough. But literally, so then Harriet Sansom Harris, who plays Sydney's mom, um, she's basically dressed and she looks exactly like my mom in essence. Like when I saw her on set, I actually took a picture and sent to like my wife. She's like, "Oh my God, like it's your mom's on set." My mom literally has that shirt. So it's actually like so it's less political commentary than just like, no, this is the world I come from. This is kind of the imagery that's there. I don't see it on screen very much. It's
No.
it's something to give it specificity in a way. And there's something like in the same way like when Paul Walter Hauser's character Lefty is proposing, there's a "Let's go Brandon" sign in the background. And but it's just because like when I was driving around South Dakota before making the film, I'd see that everywhere. I was like, okay, that's part of the world. Isn't it interesting that like these color like so Sydney's mom wears a shirt that says "These colors don't run."
Yeah.
There's the "Let's go Brandon" sign outside the diner where Lefty's proposing, and then there's Ghost Eye, and they've got he's quoting Karl Marx, like,
Yeah.
and so to me it's like interesting to like have at least for me to have a vision of America or a town or just a unit of land where all these different visions of America are kind of taking place at the same time, and so that's part of the so it's less so then it's just like okay, try to attend to these specifics that I've noted and that I think will give texture, and then and then as opposed to like, oh, I'm going to symbolically assign these characters to these political tribes or
Yeah.
things like
So it
it's
wasn't intentional, but it just is part of the mise en scène ultimately of the
yeah,
world building. And
yeah,
you're trying to be truthful and you're trying not to tell us what to think about any of it.
yeah. I'm just
Really
just
hard
like,
thing to
yeah,
do.
yeah, no, it's yeah, and then and so you just yeah, you just kind of yeah, you kind of do it, and then hopefully it just accumulates to like it feels like a in the best case just a lived in actual complex world, hopefully, as opposed to something too clean or too yeah, too sanitized in a way,
And
so that,
so
yeah,
the film has such strong Western vibes. It ends in a big Western kind of sequence. It's beautiful how you orchestrate it. And I'd love to hear about just shooting that. I'm sure you didn't have
yeah,
limitless funds and time to create
yeah,
that kind of set piece that you have. Um, but you have to be careful, right, to not let that action tell us what the morality should be, right?
yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like that was probably a consideration. And like, I guess I'm asking, how do you want audiences to walk out feeling about America? It's called Americana. Like it's so right there for us to take and then chew over and think about. And I know on some
yeah,
level it's very like kind of Tarantino-ish. Like it's like we're just
yeah,
playing and having fun and enjoying the action and the set piece, but it's so loaded. And I'm kind of
yeah,
curious, what do you want us to come away kind of feeling and
yeah, yeah. I think I'm hoping that it just captures something like in that friction point again between and maybe specifically in like the rural West between what our myths and stories and understanding of it is and what the on the ground reality is and just how they I don't know how they feed each other and how they're unresolved
mm,
and how and also maybe how conflicts of the past like bubble back up in new forms in a way.
mm,
There's something there. But yeah, like like there is like obviously Tarantino's like an influence, but and that's something that I want to work on as it goes to kind of you know maybe sublimate that Cohen's and Tarantino influence more so it feels more like my voice. But there's also like if I was to like like Howard Hawks is my favorite director, but like I'm also a big Robert Altman guy, and like there's some,
oh yeah.
like Nashville's like top five favorite movie for me, and there is something there like you can't summarize Nashville. Like Nashville feels like it's about America in a certain time and place, and these competing visions of America, and these competing grudges and ambitions and stuff like that on a much grander scale and at a higher level than I'm currently at. But on a smaller scale, kind of pulpier, bloodier version, like that's maybe something more what I'm going for as opposed to something you can quite summarize, but maybe more of a feeling,
A
maybe.
feeling you can walk away with about what you've experienced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The Hawks nature of your career is that you've kind of been in all these different places. And like
Mhm.
even in your TV career, you can maybe you could tell us a little bit about the show, but like that like that's so different tonally. And he
Mhm.
was the master of like, I could do this, I could do that. Like I can take you anywhere. Like, and I think I see a little bit of that. But in so maybe you can talk about going from something like working on the show and then this is very different, and how you shift gears and what you
Yeah.
try to hold because he's one of the classic auteurs who holds his center wherever he goes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I mean, I think it depends on the show. So like, so I just came off of doing Poker Face,
Right.
which show ran season two. But in that case, that's very much Ryan Johnson's brainchild and not in a Natasha Lyonne vehicle, and I'm kind of there, hopefully as a good hand to help run the ship
Mm.
creatively and then contribute something like I'm not a passive member of that organization but
Sure, sure, sure.
but something like my show Damnation was more of
Your
like
fingerprints. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, Damnation in Americana and Damnation, now a lot of people saw it, but it was, set in the labor wars in the 1930s in Iowa. It's kind of a Clint Eastwood Western. I'd call it like a Eastwood Western set in the world of John Steinbeck. And it was about kind of like the secret history of the American labor wars in the 30s, but kind of told in a neo-Western. And the lead character there was basically a Marxist revolutionary posing as a heartland preacher in order to try to foment basically a workers' revolution, one town at a time.
I just
And
the way you put in the stew, just in talking about that,
yeah.
all that stuff, like Steinbeck, Clint Eastwood, Marxism. Like, are you aware of how many things, like tough ingredients, those are to mix
Oh yeah,
together?
yeah, yeah. No, no, no. Yeah, yeah. It's not a huge surprise that it it didn't take off like, I don't know, Outer Banks or something. Yeah. Yeah, there's maybe I have a tendency of trying to jam everything into a project.
But you have, but you did it again. I think in this one, you again.
Yeah.
That's why it's like that's why I came out of the movie and I was like, I want to hear more. I want to see more from him
Yeah.
because there's so much in here that you found a way to mix together. Um, I guess I want to talk a little bit about some of the filmmaking aspect because before we
Yeah.
wrap, like that final sequence, like you're kind of up against it and you're figuring out like how to do big action set pieces that are worthy of a Western, a
Mhm.
neo-Western crime, and like at scale with all these stars and characters. Like you put everybody in together in
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you lit the match, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, like I mean, I think myself and cinematographer Nigel Block and a couple of stand-ins went to that location during prep and and basically we blocked it out ahead of time because we just had to. So we filmed the whole movie over 26 days, which is pretty reasonable for an indie, but still is a pretty accelerated schedule. And then we just took it one shot at a time, had it storyboarded it, and then just kind of tackled it one shot at a time. In the conception of it, like on a TV show that I worked on years ago, a producer said, and I think it's totally right, like I think I conceptualize action set pieces like pro wrestling matches.
That's
Um, so it's so I think
a good
that's
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So when I'm watching that shootout at the end of Americana, it's just like, okay, here's all the participants, and then you stage a way where you can then like focus on this little character, and this character has a beat, and then this one does this, and this one slips out of frame. So and you don't show them just enough so you forget about them, but not so long that you don't know. So then when they come back into the story, like that's
Totally.
all pro wrestling. Like
I
that's
totally, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, there's so
yeah.
many like he's back, like
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. So
back in the
that's
ring.
yeah, so that's yeah, so that was kind of it. And it's and the tone of that shootout, like like one thing I love about how like Howard Hawks, like Rio Bravo, like I mean, it's a different era than Sam Peckinpah,
Sure.
but he's not going for hyper realistic violence. There's still like to me like there's a like I want Americana to have a touch of the fairy tale to it. I mean, it's a
Mm,
violent fairy tale, but old fairy tales were violent, set in a realistic world. But there's a touch, yeah, there's a touch of almost like, and I'll be curious how people react to it, like almost like they're playing cowboys and Indians
mm,
like but for real, but for
yeah,
keeps in a
yeah,
way, and
yeah,
there's a moment between Simon Rex's character and Zon McClarnon's character where there's a recognition of that
yeah.
right at the end, which also like that was going to end in a different way, like we were running out of time, and like the night before I came up, well, actually my wife had the idea, but I came up with that ending. And just told Zahn and Simon like on the day, it's just like I think we're gonna have you guys do this. Just react however, just go for it, whatever you think. And Simon starts like laugh. His character starts laughing in that moment in recognition. It's one of my favorite moments in it. But that was just it's just like I think we should end it this way. You guys know your characters. Just show me what you guys think would happen, and they did it. Like Simon kind of laughs at the absurdity of like the Wild Westness of it, and Zahn kind of recognizes that, but then goes through with what he feels like he has to do, and
Yeah.
yeah, so that there's just the
It's
trying
very
to strike that the tonality. There's a
yeah.
specific thing I was going for there, where because if it gets too realistic or too grimy, then almost like what's hopefully there's a little bit of a weird you know fairy tale element would be lost, and so
For
that's
sure.
part of it.
There's a
Yeah,
few cool Old West style showdowns in this one. Some are just with eyes, some are with weapons, and they're very cool. I
Cool.
want to ask before we run out of time. This
Yeah.
has been really fun. I want to ask, it's been a couple years since you shot it, and it's
Yeah.
finally going to be out.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are the features you really want to make? Like you have things you're like, I really want to do one of these, or I really have a vision for something like this that we can
Yeah.
think about or
Yeah.
come out of this thing. Because this is a debut, and even though you've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
making
Yeah. Yeah.
TV for a while,
I'm hoping later this year to do a kind of a three-hander kidnapping story that's really has this weird class thing going on set in Alabama. So in a way it'd be closer to like a Southern Fried Dog Day Afternoon meets After Hours type of thing. So
okay.
it'd be a little bit more controlled. Three characters instead of a sprawl. So I kind of want to do that, but I want to come back to the before we did this, I was working on an outline for like a an ensemble set in the world of in Arkansas, in the world of like Indian casinos and street racing and things like this, a kind of one of those big shaggy ensembles.
Yeah.
I also want to do something in the world of pro wrestling.
Nice. Yeah, there's a
Uh,
lot of good stuff there. I feel like that would be a
yeah,
natural
yeah.
fit too.
And I want to be in the world of country music again. Like there's something like these things that I was raised on. I want to do like a pretentious, artfully ambitious rendering of these worlds because like it's kind of an open lane for me, I think.
It's
And it's what I'm into. So
I
and
love that you
yeah,
elevate. You could say pretentious. I'll say elevate. I think you're
yeah,
elevating it or adding layers to it that make
yeah.
it
It-
more and that give us a little depth without pushing us away from what's fun about it. And that's, I mean, I guess that's
yeah.
also Howard Hawks, frankly. He always embeds little things in there. Who are your other favorite filmmakers besides for Hawks?
Yeah, so Hawks, Sam Peckinpah, Elaine May, Peter Bogdanovich, like Kurosawa, Melville. Who else? I mean, Spielberg's a god to me.
Yeah.
Robert Altman, Michael Ritchie. My favorite movie of all time is the original Bad News Bears.
Really?
Um,
That's an
yeah,
interesting one. Huh?
and then his movie Smile is like I think perfect ensemble film about America in a specific time and place. Hal Ashby, like I my dream of dreams would be like to do to have one of those like a Hal Ashby, Michael Ritchie in the 1970s type of runs, or I
Yeah.
think I mentioned Bogdanovich. I love Peter Bogdanovich. Like they all laughed the last picture show everything he did for in about a 15-year period I think is pretty gold.
Last Picture Show is so present in this movie. I said that like I saw Eddington and talked to Ari Aster earlier this summer, and I
Yeah,
see so many things, such a different approach, but such a similar thing, and so much of Last Picture Show in both of them. Just the thing
cool.
that's happening to our small town kind of
Yeah,
identity,
yeah,
the beautiful, the
yeah,
sad, like I
yeah,
see a lot
yeah,
of that in this.
yeah.
Yeah,
I gotta see Eddington. I'm intrigued by that. I wasn't crazy about his last one, so I've been a little bit, but I think I have a feeling that I'll be more into Eddington. So yeah,
it's a very different way of looking at the small town Western
yeah, yeah,
world that you've inhabited. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
yeah.
And this movie's wonderful. I
Likewise.
can't wait for people to see it. So
Awesome. All right.
congratulations
Thanks,
and
George.
good luck. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks, man. This was a
Bye,
ton of fun.
Cone.